The morning sun filtered through the tall glass windows of Paramount First Bank, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. Emma Carter stood quietly at the front desk, her petite frame almost swallowed by the grandeur of the place. She wore a simple beige dress, her hair tied back in a neat ponytail, a brown leather tote hanging from her shoulder. Nothing about her screamed money, and certainly nothing hinted at the storm she was about to cause. "I'm here to speak with the manager," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I need to discuss an urgent matter regarding my ownership claim." The receptionist barely looked up, glancing at Emma with that automatic, tight-lipped smile people reserve for someone they think is wasting their time. "Do you have an appointment, ma'am?" "No, but it's important." "Of course," the receptionist said, already turning away. "Please take a seat. Someone will get to you. Eventually." Emma sat in the plush waiting area, ignored by the tellers, the assistants, and even the security guards who seemed more interested in their phones than the fact she had been sitting there for over 20 minutes. But she didn't lose patience. She never did. She knew what this was. She was used to being overlooked. Too simple, too quiet, too ordinary. Even after all these years, nothing much had changed. Except now, she was no longer the same. Girl from the small town with nothing but dreams. And today they were going to remember her name. After 35 minutes, a man in a fitted navy blue suit approached her. His eyes ran over her attire before he spoke. "Ma'am, I'm Adam Creighton, vice manager. I understand you have some concerns." "Yes," Emma stood. "I'm here to finalize the transfer of ownership on the bank's documents according to our legal filing. I'm now a majority shareholder in Paramount First." He stared at her, blinked, then laughed lightly, as if she'd just told him she was the Queen of England. "I'm sorry, you what?" "I'm now the majority shareholder. My husband recently acquired a controlling stake and placed it under my name." Adam's smirk grew wider. He gestured to one of the assistants who joined them with a clipboard. Mrs. Carter, was it? That's quite a claim. But you understand we can't just take your word for it. Ownership doesn't change hands like coupons." Emma remained calm. "The legal documentation was delivered yesterday. Say it should be in your records. I'm sure if such a thing happened, we'd know. We're not exactly running a corner store here." A chuckle came from behind Adam. Another employee had overheard and was clearly amused. Soon, two more joined the conversation, pretending to look busy while listening in. One of them whispered just loud enough, "She probably thinks being married to a rich guy makes her a bank owner. Cute." Emma's eyes didn't flinch. She simply repeated, "Check the records." Adam sighed, pulled out his tablet and tapped a few times. The more he scrolled, the slower his movements became. His smirk faded. He tapped again, checked another file, then another. Behind him, the laughter turned into quiet confusion. "You're Emma Carter," he said finally. "As in, Emma Carter, wife of Nathaniel Carter." "That's right." The moment his name was spoken, the entire energy in the room shifted. Even the receptionist stood up a little straighter. Nathaniel Carter wasn't just some rich man. He was the Nathaniel Carter, reclusive billionaire investor, tech magnate, and one of the most feared businessmen in the industry. If he walked into a room, CEOs shut up. If he sneezed, stock markets reacted. Adam swallowed hard. "Mrs. Carter, why didn't you mention that earlier?" "Would it have mattered?" she asked, her voice low. Before he could answer, the glass doors to the bank opened. The air practically froze. In stepped Nathaniel Carter himself, tall, sharp-featured, dressed in an all-black tailored suit with a look that could cut through steel. Behind him, three of his lawyers and his personal assistant moved like shadows, the employees who had just been laughing, pale as ghosts now. Nathaniel walked straight to his wife, placed a gentle hand on her back, and then turned to the stunned faces around them. "My wife was kind enough to handle the final step of our purchase. I trust there was no problem?" No one said a word, but the look in Nathaniel's eyes. It promised that silence wasn't going to save anyone. Emma glanced up at her husband, her lips curving into a faint smile that only he would recognize. It wasn't smug, it wasn't vengeful, It was quiet pride, the kind that blooms when the world tries to belittle you, and you rise above it, with grace. Nathaniel didn't need to speak. His presence alone made it clear this wasn't just a casual visit, this was a message. Adam Creighton, now visibly sweating under his pristine suit, tried to regain control. "Mr. Carter, we didn't realize Mrs. Carter was here on your behalf. Had we known—" "You did know," Nathaniel interrupted, his voice smooth, but icy. "You knew she came to discuss ownership. You chose to dismiss her." I was just following protocol." Nathaniel took a slow step forward, towering over Adam. "Your protocol seems to involve laughing at a woman making a legitimate business claim. I own this bank now, that means she owns it. So let me ask you plainly, Mr. Creighton, do you think it's wise to laugh at your new boss?" Adam opened his mouth, then closed it. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. The other employees around, them, the ones who had smirked, whispered, ignored, now stared at the floor, hoping not to be noticed. Emma turned to her husband and gently touched his arm. "Nate," she said softly, "can I handle this?" He looked at her for a moment, then gave a single nod. "Of course." She stepped forward, her voice still calm. "Mr. Creighton, I believe your exact words were, 'Ownership doesn't change hands like coupons,' correct? Pitu may have said something to that effect." Emma pulled a neatly folded paper from her tote and handed it to him. "This is a hard copy of the ownership transfer, signed and sealed. You were notified yesterday, but I assume no one bothered to review it." Adam's hands trembled slightly as he took it, his eyes scanning the document. "As of this morning," Emma continued, "I officially hold 52% of the shares in Paramount First Bank. That makes me not only your employer, but also the highest authority in this building, effective immediately." She turned to the group of onlookers, her voice louder now. "That means everything about how this place runs, from how customers are treated to how staff behave, is under my control. And I've seen enough to know this place needs a complete culture shift." One of the whispering assistants tried to speak. "We didn't know who you were." "You didn't need to know who I was," Emma snapped, and this time her tone had steel. "You saw a woman who didn't dress like wealth, didn't carry herself like royalty, and you assumed she was a joke." Nathaniel watched silently, his eyes flicking over every face. "You judged me based on appearance. Laughed, behind my back, disregarded me." She took a breath. "That ends today." Silence fell again, thick and uncomfortable. Adam cleared his throat, desperation in his tone now. "Mrs. Carter, I want to apologize." She cut him off with a wave of her hand. "Save it. You're not the kind of man who's sorry. You're the kind who's scared, and you should be." Then she turned to the receptionist who had ignored her for almost an hour. "What's your name?" "Claire," the woman said in a trembling voice. Emma gave her a long, searching look. "You could have asked me once why I was here. Instead, you treated me like an inconvenience. Do you know what that tells me?" Claire opened her mouth, but Emma didn't wait for an answer. "It tells me this bank has a culture problem, one that starts from the top, and I will fix it. Whether you're still here when I do depends entirely on how you act from this moment forward." Emma turned back to her husband. "Let's go." Nathaniel slipped his arm around her waist, the kind of public affection he rarely showed. "I've never been prouder of you." As they walked out, the entire staff watched them leave, stunned, silent, shaken. Outside, Emma took a deep breath of the crisp morning air. "It's funny," she said, her voice almost wistful. "They thought I was weak because I was quiet, because I dressed simply, because I didn't look like a billionaire's wife." Nathaniel smiled at her. "They made the same mistake everyone makes. They looked at the packaging and missed the power underneath." Emma glanced back once at the bank's towering glass doors. "Well, they won't forget me now." Nathaniel held open the door to their black Maybach and let her slide in. As the car pulled away, neither of them looked back again. But inside the bank, a quiet panic was already spreading, because now, the real boss had arrived. By noon, the entire corporate branch of Paramount First Bank had been pulled into emergency meetings. The head office in Manhattan received an urgent alert. A hostile atmosphere had been reported at the flagship branch, and the new owner had walked out after being dismissed and humiliated. What no one at that level had anticipated was that the new owner wasn't Nathaniel Carter. It was his wife, and Emma Carter was about to shake their world. While most of the bank's leadership scrambled to control the fallout, Emma sat calmly in her home office, tucked into the back wing of the massive Carter estate. The place was sleek but not extravagant, much like her. A few leather-bound books, her antique writing desk, and a framed photograph of her parents, long past. She looked at it for a moment. Her father, once a mechanic with dirt-stained hands, had always told her, "People respect money more than they respect kindness, Em. But when you have both, that's real power." She hadn't really understood him back then, but now it echoed. Her phone buzzed, a call from Marcus Hale, Nathaniel's top corporate attorney. "Mrs. Carter," Marcus greeted, unusually formal. "I just finished speaking with the legal team. You're well within your rights to call for a review of the branch's management practices. Given what happened today, I don't want a review," she said, cutting him off gently. There was a pause. "You don't. I want a full internal audit. HR, employee behavior, training records, complaints, everything. And I want it to start with Adam Creighton." Marcus sounded impressed. "Understood. Should I inform Mr. Carter?" "He already knows. He saw it for himself." As she ended the call, Emma opened her laptop. Dozens of emails were already pouring in, messages from board members she'd never spoken to, suddenly eager to touch base or offer support. It was amusing how fast respect showed up once power had a name and a title behind it. But she wasn't doing this for titles, not anymore. She scrolled past the messages until she found what she was looking for, a complaint report from 2 years ago. One she had anonymously submitted after overhearing a male manager refer to a female employee as decorative, not functional. The complaint had disappeared, buried, ignored. Now she was going to dig it back up. Meanwhile, inside the bank, Adam Creighton was having the worst day of his career. He had spent the last hour being chewed out on a Zoom call with the executive team. His title was now under review, which was a fancy way of saying he was 2 inches from being fired, and every employee who had so much as smirked at Emma Carter that morning had been asked to prepare a statement. Some of them cried. Some denied everything. But the security footage said otherwise, the most painful part. Adam realized he hadn't just misjudged a woman, he'd humiliated the only person with the authority to erase his career with a single email. And she had walked out without even raising her voice. Emma Carter wasn't simple, she was lethal. By mid-afternoon, a statement was issued to all Paramount First employees. Mrs. Emma Carter was now an active executive partner in the bank's leadership council, with full authority to oversee internal conduct policies, leadership development, and ethical accountability programs. Her name was no longer just on the paperwork, it was on the door. Emma knew exactly what that meant. No more being mistaken for the assistant, no more condescending tones, no more subtle dismissals. Now, when she entered a room, silence would follow. Not because she was feared, but because she had earned something rarer, real authority. That evening, Nathaniel joined her in the garden patio behind their estate. He handed her a glass of chilled wine and raised an eyebrow. "You look like someone who's just toppled an empire." Emma laughed softly. "Just starting a new one." Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Do you ever miss being invisible?" She thought about that. "I miss the peace of it," she admitted, "but not the disrespect." "And definitely not today," he nodded. "You're dangerous when you're underestimated." She met his eyes. Let them keep doing it. Then she lifted her glass. "To quiet women with loud legacies." Nathaniel clinked his glass against hers, and somewhere in the dimly lit offices of Paramount First Bank, a dozen executives were already whispering the same truth. They should have never laughed. The following morning, Emma's face was on the front page of every major business outlet. The quiet storm. Emma Carter steps into power at Paramount First. Humiliated then heroic. Billionaire's wife exposes banking bias. Don't call. Her just the wife, she owns the bank now. She sipped her coffee slowly, scrolling through article after article. They got most of the story wrong, of course. The media loved a quick narrative. Poor woman mocked by corporate wolves, saved by her rich husband, then gifted a crown, neatly packaged, shiny enough to sell. But they missed the most important part. Emma Carter hadn't been given anything. She'd earned everything. She was the one who advised Nathaniel to invest in the crumbling bank in the first place. She had identified the gaps in leadership, the outdated infrastructure, and the cold transactional culture that alienated both staff and customers. She just didn't demand credit for it, until now. And credit, it seemed, was exactly what the world was finally giving her. That morning, her inbox exploded. Half the emails were from women in corporate banking and finance. They were telling her stories, quiet stories, about being talked over, second-guessed, dismissed in meetings, about losing promotions to men who couldn't even remember their names, about bosses who gave them compliments instead of raises. One message stood out. It came from a woman named Layla Green, an account manager from the Chicago branch. "Mrs. Carter, I've been working here for 7 years. I've trained people who got promoted above me. I've been told I smile too much, then told I don't. Smile enough. Thank you for reminding them that we see everything, even when we stay quiet. Just know we're watching you now, and we're rooting for you." Emma read the message twice. Her eyes burned a little. Then she hit reply. "Thank you. Layla, I see you too. Let's make sure they hear us from now on." Meanwhile, back at the bank, the energy was tense. Adam Creighton's office had been cleared out, quietly, no official word, but everyone knew. His nameplate was gone, his parking space reassigned. What stung most for the rest of the staff was that no dramatic firing had taken place. Emma didn't yell. She didn't storm through with lawyers. She simply moved the pieces. People in power who scream are easy to tune out. But the ones who stay calm, they're terrifying. At noon, Emma arrived at the branch again. This time, no one made her wait. The moment she stepped inside, the receptionist stood up so fast she knocked over her pen holder. A young intern sprinted to press the elevator button before Emma even reached it. She said nothing, just walked. Let them feel the shift. On the top floor, the conference room had been prepared for her first internal leadership meeting. Emma entered slowly, her steps light but deliberate. Every executive present, all men, most of them older, stood to greet her. She nodded once, then took her seat at the head of the table. "Let's begin," she said, folding her hands. "Today isn't about revenge. It's about restructuring." One of the older board members, a silver-haired man named Russell Drayton, leaned forward. "Mrs. Carter, we do want to apologize again for yesterday." "I'm not interested." "In apologies," she interrupted. "I want to talk about how a culture of arrogance and exclusion managed to grow this deep without any of you noticing or caring." Silence. She clicked a button on the tablet in front of her. A live presentation appeared on the screen behind her. Charts, emails, complaint records, employee turnover rates, all highlighting one painful truth. People left because they felt unseen, dismissed, forgotten. Emma turned to the room. "You've mistaken obedience for satisfaction. You've been running a machine, not a team, and machines break down." Russell cleared his throat again. "So, what exactly are you proposing?" "I'm not proposing, I'm implementing." Then she laid it out. Mandatory empathy training for managers, a zero-tolerance harassment policy that actually held people accountable, a whistleblower system that went directly to her desk, promotions based on merit, not politics, and every department head would now report to her weekly. By the time the meeting ended, the room looked like it had survived a hurricane. Not because of noise, but because the old power structure had been torn down with surgical precision. As the others filed out, one junior executive, a woman, named Tessa, who had stayed silent during the meeting, lingered. "Mrs. Carter," she said quietly, "can I just say, all of this, it's what we've been waiting for." Emma smiled for real this time. "Then let's make sure no one waits this long again." As she walked out of the room, her heels clicking against the marble floor, the message was clear. Emma Carter wasn't a symbol. She was a reckoning. Emma barely made it halfway down the corridor before her assistant caught up with her. A soft-spoken man named Jonah, smart as hell and more organized than any three people combined. "Mrs. Carter," he said, slightly out of breath, "there's a situation. Chicago branch. Apparently there's a regional manager who's threatening resignations because of your new merit-based promotion system." Emma didn't slow down. "Let him resign." Jonah blinked. "Really?" "Yes. And tell HR not to beg him to stay. If he's against merit, he was never here for the right reasons." She stopped at the elevator, turned to him. "Also, Jonah, stop calling me Mrs. Carter." He hesitated. "You'd prefer—" "Emma," she said, "I've got enough titles. Let's not add more." He smiled, nodded, and made the call. As she rode the elevator down, Emma watched her reflection in the polished gold doors. Just a woman in a smart navy suit, no jewelry but her wedding ring. No flash, no performance. But there was something new in her eyes, something she didn't even recognize a year ago. Command and clarity. Downstairs, she made her way through the lobby again, this time to check in on the teller floor. Customers turned and whispered. Some smiled. One older woman even approached her shyly. "You're the lady from the news, aren't you?" the woman said. "The one who stood up to the bankmen." Emma gave a warm smile. "I just stood up, that's all." "Well, I'm glad you did," the woman nodded. "About time someone reminded them they work for us, not the other way around." Emma thanked her and moved on. The woman was right. Banks had stopped serving people. They'd started serving numbers, reports, spreadsheets, profit margins. Somewhere along the way, humanity had gotten lost between line items, and Emma was determined to bring it back. Back in her temporary office, Emma met with the new HR director, a sharp, no-nonsense black woman named Alicia, who had been passed over for promotion 3 times in the past 5 years. Emma had already fixed that. Now Alicia sat across from her, laying out a file. "I've gone through the Chicago reports," Alicia said. "Turns out your instincts were dead on. That manager's been blocking women from promotions for 2 years straight. Especially mothers." Emma's jaw tightened. "Get rid of him quietly but quickly. I don't want this to turn into another PR mess." Alicia nodded. "Already drafting the exit package. Also, the staff in Texas are asking for a live town hall. They want to hear from you, not the board, not the lawyers, you." Emma exhaled slowly. This was happening fast, and it wasn't slowing down. But she had no intention of backing out. Her whole life, she'd watched powerful people pass the mic to each other like they were in some private circle, a language of suits and status. Now they were asking her to speak, so she would. "I'll fly down to Texas next week," Emma said. "Tell them I'll take questions. No script. They'll get the real me." Alicia raised her eyebrows. "That's bold." Emma gave a small smile. "Good. Let them see I don't need a teleprompter, to be honest." That night back home, Nathaniel watched her from across the dinner table. They ate on the patio again, quiet music playing in the background. He had barely touched his food. "You're different," he said finally. Emma looked up, chewing thoughtfully. "Good different or bad different?" He smiled, but it was tinged with something deeper, maybe concern, maybe awe. "Power suits you. More than I expected." "I don't want power for the sake of it," she said softly. "I just want to fix what they broke." "You're not afraid of how fast it's all moving?" "I was," she admitted, "but I realized they moved fast when they were hurting people, so why should I move slow to protect them?" Nathaniel leaned back, studying her. "Do you remember what you told me when I asked you to put the shares in your name?" Emma smiled faintly. "I said I didn't want to be your shadow." "And now?" She looked out over the estate grounds, the night breeze playing with the tips of her hair. "Now I want to be the storm." It was a storm, all right, and one that now had Wall Street's full attention. By the time Emma landed in Texas, the buzz had reached a fever pitch. Investors were curious, reporters were desperate, rival banks were watching nervously, and inside every branch of Paramount First, employees were whispering the same question. What is she going to say? They got their answer at exactly 3:00 p.m. inside the downtown Houston branch's main conference hall. No teleprompter, no script. Just Emma, standing in front of a modest podium with her hair pinned back, a crisp white blouse tucked into black slacks, and that same steady gaze that had made so many of her critics trip over their words. She looked around the room, a mix. Of branch employees, tellers, mid-level managers, and a handful of regional leads. Some curious, some skeptical, all watching. "I know what some of you are thinking," she began, "that I'm just the billionaire's wife, that I woke up one day bored of shopping and decided to play boss." A few people chuckled nervously. "Well, let me clarify that part," she continued. "I'm not playing, and this isn't a costume. I've been in the background of this company for years, analyzing numbers, strategies, client patterns. I just didn't wear a badge, and that was the mistake." She paused. "The mistake, was mine. I let others speak for me. I let a title, or the lack of one, decide whether I was taken seriously. And that ended the moment I walked into that branch and got laughed at." Now, silence. She leaned forward slightly. "I'm not here to punish. I'm here to rebuild. Because I've read your files. I know how many of you are doing 3 people's jobs. I know who keeps getting passed over. I know how many of you cry in your cars before work and smile through it." Some in the back lowered their eyes. "I also know who's been abusing their power, protecting their friends, padding their bonuses while cutting your hours, and I want you to know something very clearly. That ends now." The room held its breath. "I don't want loyalty," Emma said. "I want honesty. I want accountability. If you've been doing your job with integrity, I've got your back. If you've been using this bank like your own private country club, get ready. I'm coming." A man near the back raised his hand. "Mrs. Carter." "Emma," she corrected gently. He nodded. "Emma, you said this isn't about punishment, but you've fired 4 managers already. Some people are scared." She looked him in the eyes. "Good. If fear is what it takes to make them reconsider how they treat people, so be it. But let me make one thing clear. I'm not firing people to send a message. I'm firing people because they've failed you, and I'm not going to protect that anymore." Applause started slowly from the left side of the room, then spread like wildfire. It wasn't just polite clapping, it was relief, release, real emotional applause from people who had waited years for someone to actually care what it felt like to be on the ground floor. After the town hall, Emma stayed for nearly an hour, shaking hands, listening to concerns, even hugging one young woman who whispered through tears that she'd almost quit last week because her manager kept taking credit for her work. "You're seen now," Emma whispered back, "and you matter." That night at the hotel, Emma's phone rang just after midnight. It was Alicia. "We've got a problem," Alicia said. "A board member, Robert Lane, he's been talking to outside investors. Word is he's trying to push back against your new reforms. Says you're threatening the profit-first model." Emma sat upright. "Is he trying to oust me? Looks like he's building support for a vote to limit your authority. He's saying you're too emotionally involved in operations." Emma didn't blink. "Let him talk. Let him build. And then when he's comfortable, we pull the rug," Alicia said. "No," Emma replied, voice razor-sharp. "We flip the whole damn floor." She hung up and stared out the window at the city lights below. They wanted a quiet, decorative woman at the table, someone who'd smile, sign, and step aside. But instead they got a woman who had lived in the shadows. And now? She was burning the whole room bright enough to blind them. Emma didn't sleep that night. She sat by the hotel window, legs curled beneath her, her laptop open and glowing in the dark. Her fingers moved fast, calculating numbers, reviewing board bylaws, highlighting sections of the charter she knew most of the men on that board had never bothered to read. Emotionally involved? Of course she was. Only the privileged had the luxury of being detached. The next morning she returned to New York, not to rest but to face the board of directors in their ivory tower headquarters. They'd scheduled an emergency meeting to address concerns about her aggressive interventions. Emma knew what that meant. They were ready to come for her seat. Let them try. At exactly 9 a.m. she stepped into the grand boardroom, mahogany walls, chandelier lighting, a massive horseshoe table that reeked of wealth and tradition. 12. Men and two women sat waiting, dressed like they'd walked out of a Wall Street catalogue. At the far end, Robert Lane sat smugly in a grey pinstripe suit, his gold watch glinting under the lights. He didn't stand when she walked in. None of them did. Emma didn't care. She walked to the center of the room and placed her leather folder on the table. "Let's not waste time," she said coolly. "You've all seen the articles. You've heard the employee feedback, and now some of you," her eyes landed on Robert, "believe that I'm too emotional to lead this institution responsibly." Robert cleared his throat, smug. "Mrs. Carter, this isn't personal. It's about maintaining balance. You've made sweeping decisions, terminated long-standing executives, and implemented policies without a full board vote. We're concerned about stability." Emma let out a quiet breath, more of a laugh, really. "No, Robert, you're not concerned about stability. You're concerned about change, because for the first time in your career, someone is pulling back the curtain, and that someone happens to be a woman you didn't think was worth acknowledging last week." Gasps. A few of the other members exchanged glances. Robert's jaw tightened. "And let's talk about your concern for balance," Emma said, flipping open her folder. 10 of the last 12 internal promotions went to men who played golf, with senior leadership. 3 ethics complaints were buried under insufficient evidence, all involving female staff. And guess whose name came up in all 3? She slid a printed report across the table toward Robert. "Yours." Robert didn't touch it. "I don't need a vote," Emma continued. "I own 52%. I let this board exist because I believe in collaboration. Not because I require your approval, but if any of you support Robert's attempt to strip me of operational authority, you'll be removed from the board by the end of business today." She turned her gaze to each face. Some looked down, others turned pale. "I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to make sure this bank survives the next decade with its soul intact." Finally, one of the older board members, a man named Patel, leaned forward and spoke. "Mrs. Carter, Emma, I've sat on this board for 15 years, and I've never seen someone speak like this." He paused. "You may be exactly what we needed all along. I support you." A few others nodded. One woman said softly, "Same here." Robert stood abruptly. "This is a joke. We're letting her turn this place into a circus based on feelings and PR buzz. And then when he's comfortable, we pull the rug," Alicia said. "No," Emma replied, voice razor sharp. "We flip the whole damn floor." She hung up and stared out the window at the city lights below. They wanted a quiet, decorative woman at the table, someone who'd smile, sign, and step aside. But instead they got a woman who had lived in the shadows. And now? She was burning the whole room bright enough to blind them. Emma didn't sleep that night. She sat by the hotel window, legs curled beneath her, her laptop open and glowing in the dark. Her fingers moved fast, calculating numbers, reviewing board bylaws, highlighting sections of the charter she knew most of the men on that board had never bothered to read. Emotionally involved? Of course she was. Only the privileged had the luxury of being detached. The next morning she returned to New York, not to rest but to face the board of directors in their ivory tower headquarters. They'd scheduled an emergency meeting to address concerns about her aggressive interventions. Emma knew what that meant. They were ready to come for her seat. Let them try. At exactly 9 a.m. she stepped into the grand boardroom, mahogany walls, chandelier lighting, a massive horseshoe table that reeked of wealth and tradition. 12. Men and 2 women sat waiting, dressed like they'd walked out of a Wall Street catalogue. At the far end, Robert Lane sat smugly in a grey pinstripe suit, his gold watch glinting under the lights. He didn't stand when she walked in. None of them did. Emma didn't care. She walked to the center of the room and placed her leather folder on the table. "Let's not waste time," she said coolly. "You've all seen the articles. You've heard the employee feedback, and now some of you," her eyes landed on Robert, Believe that I'm too emotional to lead this institution responsibly. Robert cleared his throat, smug. Mrs. Carter, this isn't personal. It's about maintaining balance. You've made sweeping decisions, terminated long-standing executives, and implemented policies without a full board vote. We're concerned about stability. Emma let out a quiet breath. More of a laugh, really. No, Robert, you're not concerned about stability. You're concerned about change, because for the first time in your career, someone is pulling back the curtain, and that someone happens to be a woman you didn't think was worth acknowledging last week. Gasps. A few of the other members exchanged glances. Robert's jaw tightened. And let's talk about your concern for balance, Emma said, flipping open her folder. 10 of the last 12 internal promotions went to men who played golf, with senior leadership. 3 ethics complaints were buried under insufficient evidence, all involving female staff. And guess whose name came up in all 3? She slid a printed report across the table toward Robert. Yours. Robert didn't touch it. I don't need a vote, Emma continued. I own 52%. I let this board exist because I believe in collaboration. Not because I require your approval, but if any of you support Robert's attempt to strip me of operational authority, you'll be removed from the board by the end of business today. She turned her gaze to each face. Some looked down, others turned pale. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to make sure this bank survives the next decade with its soul intact. Finally, one of the older board members, a man named Patel, leaned forward and spoke. Mrs. Carter. Emma. I've sat on this board for 15 years, and I've never seen someone speak like this. He paused. You may be exactly what we needed all along. I support you. A few others nodded. One woman said softly, Same here. Robert stood abruptly. This is a joke. We're letting her turn this place into a circus based on feelings and PR buzz.